Kokina semdol kake mofaseda.
This is Talking Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I am your host, Artemis Albosa, a member of Noir. We recently rejoined the Alliance. This is Talking Stations for purposes, so don't really mind that. Also on the show with me today, my faithful co-host, Silver Suspiria, as always, a member of Federation Uprising.
Hey everyone, good evening, good morning, good afternoon.
I like the what's the term there? Time zone. You're being very considerate of people in other time zones. It's very kind of you.
I love my international brethren.
Indeed. Also on the show with us today, we have Prometheus Hinkin, otherwise known as Promi. He is the head diplomat of the CFC, and not the one you're thinking of. He's also a member of War Deck Mechanics, otherwise known as No Vacancies. You have a lot of asterisks in your name and title. What do you have to say about that, Promi?
Hey everyone. What do you mean by asterisks? Can you explain a little bit more?
So you're the CFC head diplomat, but not the CFC everyone thinks about.
I have
You're
no idea.
a member of...
I have no idea what the other CFC is. We are a clusterfuck of alliances living up north. Our name would be too long, so therefore we are the CFC, the Combined Forces Coalition.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. And then also your alliance is called War Deck Mechanics, but nobody knows who that is. Everybody knows Novak though. No Vacancies. Who are No Vacancies? Let's skip to that.
So Novak was a C5 corp. We moved to a C2, C5 null right now. So that's what we've been doing.
Right on. And let's jump straight into your player history actually, and talk about who you are, how'd you end up in No Vacancies, and therefore the CFC.
Okay, so I restarted the game in 2015, about 5 years ago now, right after the big soft changes. I actually joined up Navlakida's corporation, which wasn't his at the time. I forget who the CEO was, maybe Chainsaw. Anyway, it was part of the alliance called J4LP, and we lived up in Cloudring. I was there for a little bit, then I joined Brave Newbies when they went back to, Faction Warfare. Played there for a little bit, went down to Quarius, did the whole Quarius Fight Club version 1.0, kind of roamed around and then just kind of got tired of the whole blob stuff and went small gang, made my way over to No Vacancies, and here I am. Was in Rote Capel for a little bit, left Rote Capel, went back to No Vacancies.
So a transition of No Vacancies from C5 Corp, the C2 C5 Corp, to now nullsec Sov fighters is not a normal corporation trajectory. What's the deal there?
Okay, so No Vacancies was always a wormhole corp, always will be a wormhole corp, right? So when the North kind of fell a couple years back, there was some open Sov. Space Monkeys Alliance used to live version 2.0. So Space Monkeys 2.0 used to live in Fade. They tried to take some Sov there. They failed miserably, got kicked out again. And there was some open space in HHK system, right? And we had a nullsec direct right to HHK, and two dudes were really bored. They're like, hey, we have a JITA connection nearby, and we have a direct to this HHK system, has an ADM of 1. Let's just Entosis it and see what happens. So No Vacancy suddenly became on the map, so to speak. And they held HHK for a little bit, and lo and behold, Cone, United Federation of Conifers, moved into Pure Blind, and they had some stuff going on in Fade. So that's where that connection came from. We became friendly with them, started blopsing with them, and started blopsing the crap out of GOTG, which they have this very weird, uncanny reflexibility where, like, if you put in a hunter in a system, literally like 15 Ishtars and like Nidhoggers and stuff, they just warp off instantly, sometimes before you even load system. I don't know how they do it. They're really, really good at APMs though. So, but yeah, that was that over there. And that still remained. I think No Vacancy still has it, or they transferred it over to Cone for jump bridge purposes. But the connections were always there. And then when I was in Novak the first time, I left for Rote Capel. And then I went back to No Vacancies, and that connection was always there. So we were like friendly with the leaderships and stuff. But when we took tribute, which is a funny story in itself, I was at Rote Capel, so I can talk about that a little bit later too.
All right, on. So let's talk about the CFC then. You already mentioned you guys are a bit friendly with conifers and some other groups. What led to the formation and more to the point, the official formation of the CFC? When did you guys decide to stop just being friendly with each other and band together as a fighting force?
Okay, so when the goons went and when the Imperium went and glassed the North, there was a bunch of I don't know if they were renters or just I guess groups that were a little bit over their head, but they started taking some systems, dropping some iHubs in TCUs in tribute, right? And at the time, Rote Capel was staged in Covern, which, by the way, stay the fuck out of Covern. It's not for you. Which is on the other side of the map. It's in Galante Losec, right? So we, one of our guys, he's like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we had a bait beacon in JGAMP or something like that, or MTACO, right? Because you have all these dudes that are evacing their stuff, right? So we're like, all right, screw it, let's try and do it. So he had a bunch of Tristans and he had some Entosis links, and he started Entosising, and lo and behold, we managed to get a constellation tribute without really even trying. At the same time, Quiet, which is Unspoken Alliance, they were moving away from the drone lands, and they started moving over here. They're like, hey, there's a constellation here. We've worked with you guys before. There's blobs groups and stuff like that. And yeah, they kind of moved into the constellation next to us. We moved into our constellation, put up our free beacon, by the way, for anyone who is evacuating or just wants to move from the north from the far north to Jita. There's a free beacon over in JCamp for anyone to use. Please, by all means, put all your jump freighters and all your capitals to that beacon.
Okay. That's a clever trick. So, how many did you get? I always wondered that, because I see it, I saw it there, and I'm like, man, that's pretty close. You must get a lot.
The first day, like within the hour of it coming online, we killed a Nyx. Let me see if I could find the Z kill.
Super. I was expecting like more jump freighters you'd get like
we did. Those jump freighters didn't pay their tolls, and they refused to pay their toll, so we had to take care of it. I'll try to find some, but if you go to Z-Kill, just look at JGAMP, look at losses there. There should be some jump freighter losses.
Yeah, I'll work on that.
So basically, that's how Quiet and Rote kind of moved in over here. And that's just tribute. And then obviously Triggered was there. And then Harvey's group, Peak, they formed their own little alliance called Toxic Company. They took some Masav up in, if you look at the map that I showed you guys earlier, up in that little UMI pocket and everything, they used to live up there. Good space, good moons, and it's a very strategic location to get into Pureblind, which again, our friends were living in Pureblind, so we're going to try to build a bridge from our little pocket in MTACO and ETACO over to UMI. Didn't really work out, but that was the goal over there, and then Trig just kind of took those 2 or 3 constellations, and it's theirs now. So yeah. In Vale, let's see. In Vale, you had Forsaken Empire and Reverb. They're kind of like reboots of old projects. Like Reverb, I believe that was they existed before, and then I'm not entirely sure what the history is with Forsaken Empire, but it's Lord Servants group. Which, by the way, they're extremely, extremely good PvPers. They have not lost any of these fights, according to Lords. And we can go into those later. I'll show you, the war reports that I linked and everything. They fight the blob. They are like the epitome, the shining beacon of anti-blob warfare.
Am I detecting a tad bit of sarcasm in your voice?
Hey, I report, you decide, right?
So can we back up, so when you get into history, yeah. What is CFC? Who is in it currently? Because there's a lot, right? Randos. So
the core group is Rote Capel, Unspoken, Conifers, and then obviously the Wormhole group, which is my group, and let's see, that's War Deck Mechanics. That's the 4. That's 4 for the core over there. And then every so often, if we ever need like dread numbers or something, we'll get some help from free range chickens.
See,
organic.
these are associations I didn't know about. Like I didn't know that the No Vacancies Wormhole group was part of that coalition. And chickens. That's associate, I guess.
Yeah. So Wardak or Novak, it's the tremendous bat phone from Nullsec. Like all three of us show up and like we give it our best. We have like a couple dread tunes and then like mostly subcap help.
So I gotta ask, why are you guys? You initially got involved because some dude was bored, and then you're like, huh? Well, what if we got this this bait beacon up in JGamp, and that happens? So I can understand why you hold that Sov. But why are you going out to Nullsec and fighting over Sov and Vale?
So the Sov is just to get fights. There's no rhyme or reason for it. There's no like ulterior motive or anything. It's literally, hey, fuck that guy in particular over there. Let's go fight them. Because so most of us are in our 30s, late 20s, early 30s. We have like 2 or 3 hours a day to play. I'm not going to sit there and stare at a damn Titan for 3 hours only to be told to stand down. Like I'm going to go out there. We're going to go and do some stuff. We'll go and we'll reinforce an Athenor. We'll reinforce like a popular hub, right? We'll go. We'll blops whoever the hell, right? It's just to go out there and play the damn video game. Like it's not there for anything. There's no grand scheme of anything, basically.
Yeah, I could attest to this, Artemis. Like Fed Up was deployed to this region for a couple of weeks, and there's nothing better to kick off a fight than just go and toast something. Right, so like every single night we went up there into the region where the CFC guys were. You just start toasting their hub, they form up, we fight. Like it's been great to stage in low sec there, and in 4 jumps I can fight these guys every night, every time I go out. So
exactly, and we're close to Jita, so we can always get our resupply. It's and the other thing that I want to kind of talk to you through and bring up the war report. A lot of it is over moons. And like, I know there was a huge narrative of like, oh, no one's going to mine these things or anything like that. Or, the little guy is never going to mine these things. Completely false. One, those moons are incredible money for a small group like us, right? I mean, there's like, I don't know, 200 or 300 characters in Rote Capel, which is probably like around 30, 40 real dudes, like 40 heartbeats, right? That's an incredible amount of money to mine like R64s, especially if you put them on a 30-day cycle. So those moons are valuable for us, and they're also valuable for a group like Forsaken and Reverb, right? So a lot of these fights and a lot of everything since July of last year, basically when everything started happening, they've been over moons. Like we've been actively fighting over moons and over iHubs.
Has this changed at all since the removal of regular ore to the moons, or is that not really a thing for you guys?
No, it's moon goo. Like the moon goo's the valuable stuff, like R32s, R64s.
Right on.
Yeah, I mean, for a group your size, even my size, it's the lifeblood, really. Like, you could pay for a lot by mining a few R64s. Sure.
Yeah, and like I don't know how Unspoken runs their internal stuff, but like we don't really have SRP, so to speak. So you're like actively encouraged to go and like make money if you have to.
So this battle report we're looking at, I see some capitals, I see some other stuff. What went down here?
So this is a war report. It's a website that pretty much, so you put in 2 sides and it scrapes Zkill and it finds kills. It's not entirely accurate, but it does scrape a lot and gives you a good overall picture. So you can say we've got about 150 bill destroyed versus there. I'm sorry, 150. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, Forsaken and Reverb, another 2 active groups that kind of neighbor you guys.
So looking at this war report, you've got, what is that, 5 separate entities versus 2. Is it similar in terms of the numbers? Do you outnumber them 5 to 2, or are they larger groups?
So if you do some Lord Servant math, we are completely blob. We have 5 alliances that get bat-phoned all the time to fight FICO, Forsaken Empire and Reverb. That's their I guess given name. Forsaken Empire's FE, and then Reverb's ticker is Echo, so FICO. If you look at the numbers, though, it's really about even 1,000 to 1,000, and that's with the free-range chickens with the organic bat phone for dread numbers. But if you do some Lord's math, it's actually 5 alliances beating up on them.
Fair enough. So let's go ahead, Silver.
Oh, I was going to ask what the fights are like, because when I was up there, it's sort of very subcap heavy for both of you. Like we went and messed with Reverb and you guys, and it's it wasn't a case where you guys were itching to drop caps. Most of the time, we had a nice subcap fight, and that would be the end of it. Do the caps come out when there's serious stuff at stake, or like what's the fighting like?
It's mostly subcaps. A lot of it's Gilas versus Sacrileges. So they love to fly Gilas, which we'll counter with either Serbs if we're trying to be like a little bit non-committal, which is not a very good counter. We'll counter with Sacs, which is an extremely good counter. And then we'll just do a lot of it is if it's over nodes and stuff. A lot of it's small gang on both sides. I'm going to try to find a good battle report. It's like a summation of fights that happened, and a lot of it's like even just small gang stuff, like almost kitchen sinky. And the caps come out if it's over like a structure or something. If they undock caps, we'll undock caps. There was one funny fight where it was actually trigger happy rather, and trigger happy was fighting Forsaken Empire. They just got done reinforcing their Fortizar over in Gek J, which, by the way, has been a very big hotbed. If you look at the map I linked, Gek J is it's a system in the little northern part of Vale of the Silent. It's got really good moons over there, and it's got really good security status. So
while you're looking up that battle report, I want to quickly try and paint a picture for our listeners who may be unfamiliar with Sov mechanics and sort of how these fights happen. So the reason that they're choosing these particular doctrines is in part because of the way mechanics work with Sov when it's reinforced. So initially, when you reinforce Sov, it's a single thing. You have a dude effectively mining Sov with an Entosis module, and usually that goes uncontested for the reinforce. But when it comes out of reinforce, instead of just having one thing in space that you have to touch again, it instead starts spawning these nodes all throughout the constellation where the system is in. So this is usually like 4 or 5 systems in which some node will spawn randomly. And you have to go and capture these nodes by saw-bonding them again, but they will have up to 5 at a time and more spawn over time. So your fleets have to be mobile. They have to be able to move from system to system rather quickly unless there's some specific constellation geography that allows you to hold a choke point. And then you also have to be able to either use throwaway Entosis or protect your Entosis in form or fashion. Recently, there was an update to the game that, well, not recently anymore, but you can now remote repair your Entosis ship, so they can be repped. But with the Entosis active, if they're only using T1, you only have a 25-kilometer optimal in that thing, so you can't move very far.
Yeah, so I linked a couple battle reports, and this just shows like the small gang nature that we have. And then they brought a Confessor Deacon fleet to counter some of it, which is actually pretty easy to kill if you have rapid light ship. So they're not loading for me, but maybe it'll load for you guys.
Oh, we'll find out.
We'll see. Okay. But yeah, so you get Reverb. They do like those 100 MN Gilas. Yep.
Yeah. So our counter to that is MWD Sacrileges with a Newt in the high. Once you shut off their single adaptive invul, they just fucking go.
Can you quickly describe how the fights play out? Is it a lot of one group chasing the other group's fleet around? Do you guys sort of split up into sub-fleets and then a skirmish starts in one and everybody consolidates together? Like, is there any rhyme or reason to the way these fights occur?
It's kind of organic. A lot of them will be on gates, or they'll be like on a single node, just because it happened that both fleets showed up to the same node. And it's like, okay, let's try and put a trap bubble. Let's put a drag bubble. Okay, we trap them. Let's fight. So, and then while the fight's going on, other Entosisers go out and get the other node. And then obviously single objectives like moons are on the moon. Sometimes they'll be on the gate.
So I got the first battle report you sent me over. I guess this was a Sov fight over a couple systems in the constellation.
Yeah, those are where all the node fights were at. And this is the example that I said of like the small gang versus small gang stuff.
Yeah, I like this.
And then, you mentioned that sometimes when you fight over structures, cap fights will occur. What's the size? Do you escalate significantly in terms of the number of pilots on field when those sorts of things happen? Or is it still roughly like 50v50?
Oh, it's always going to be under 100. Like I don't think I've ever seen over maybe 10 or 15 dreads on each side. They'll do carriers sometimes, they'll do dreads, we'll counter with dreads, so on and so. It's never supers, it's almost always dreadnoughts and carriers.
Right on. So how's the war been going in terms of accomplishing objectives? I mean, obviously you guys are going for content more than anything, but is your content accidentally conquering a constellation here and there, or is it still just
there's no
stuff and they respond?
Poke stuff, we respond. We don't want to evict anybody. Contrary to some memes or whatever, we really don't want to evict anyone, because this is good content. Like, this is what Eve should be, in my opinion. Like, it's just good small regional conflicts with capitals, no real like super overwhelming superior super cap presence or anything like that. And a recent addition is actually what are they called? Brand new bros. They just moved in, and they're neutral to everybody. So
have they moved into Tribute or to Vale?
Vale. They moved into Vale. Tribute's pretty much locked down because it's a smaller region. Vale's a very big region. There's still plenty of space to go and take it if anyone wants to go and take a constellation for themselves.
You mentioned fighting over moons, and I can't quite recall. Are you guys fighting over the moons in Vale in order to capture and mine them, or are you just poking the moons in Vale because there were? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I have a little napkin math here. This is in Vale. We have killed, since December 2019, we've killed 7 Forsaken Empire and 1 Reaver Project moons. There was a fight where we actually, I think it's the second battle report, where we actually anchored a Content Astra as we killed an Athenor. We also anchored a Content Astra next to their staging system too, which actually got reinforced today. So yay, fun times. Yeah, so we go over there. We have a good jump bridge network into Vale. We'll go over there, we'll mine it, and then they'll reinforce it, and then we'll fight over it, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a tug of war, yeah.
Do you guys do like normal blopsing on the ratters and miners as well, or is it just these sort of timer fights?
Just timer fights. Blopsing we did a lot against Guardians of the Galaxy.
But not anymore, I take it?
Well, they moved out, another group moved in, and we'll just continue. Life moves on over there. So, it's just weird. It's just the weirdest thing to me how like almost all of them warp off or like dock up or go to a safe as soon as you enter system. I can't for the life of me figure out how they have that EP.
I don't know whatever you'd be insinuating. But so this whole region's been like a hotbed since you said, really since it got glassed by goons, right?
Yeah.
And there's been activity all over the place, and there's battle reports, and your area of the map lights up all the time with activity, and people go in and out. But for the most part, the big boys have kind of left you alone. I know that a SIG of Test was up there for a little while, but like you're not getting interfered with any of the big blocks for the most part, are you?
Excuse me, the CFC is a big block. Okay.
Okay.
No, it's been fantastic with that regard. It's literally like regional conflict.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so talk to me about Trigger. So Trigger is kind of like this other third party. So you got like this ongoing conflict going on with the Reverb guys, and then like in the middle of all this stuff is Trigger. And like I know when I was up there, occasionally, actually about every time I left Losec, Trigger would follow me with a Sino ship and sort of wait for us to engage and then decide if they wanted to play or not. Like they just randomly like drop in whatever they feel like that night. Like how does that affected your objectives at all? Or was there a non-invasion at some point with them?
No, there's no. So one thing to get this right, there is no pacts with anything. We can toast their hubs, they can toast ours. We can fight over moons and everything. The thing is, it's too much hassle to try to fight like I don't know them over Sov and then fight also Echo over Sov. So it's kind of like I don't even really know how to describe it. But there is no like non-invasion packs. The only like blues in Tribute are Quiet and Rote Capel. Like everyone else, free.
I think everyone would rather the fight happen not on their doorstep, but rather across the street, so to speak. You want it nearby, but you don't want it affecting your crabbing.
So the
Speaking
funny
of
thing,
which, does the what do you call the group that you're fighting against? FECO, is that what you said?
Yeah, FICO, like Echo
FICO?
and FICO.
Do they like come back in and try and offensively Entosis your stuff, reel your Astras, Athenor, stuff like that?
Yeah, actually, we lost. I want to say 2 Athenors to them, and we did lose one of our jump bridges to them. They've been since replaced. But yeah, like they're mostly on the defensive, but they do offensive operations. One of our bridges is in 900, which is like maybe 5 or 6 from their staging, if I remember correctly. So they did kill that, and it was a really good fight. And we do lose sometimes, we do win sometimes. It's never like overwhelming on either side. It's like I said, it's a good tug of war, basically.
We had a question in chat. What is the staging system for Brand New Bros? And can you describe sort of the geography of Vale so that our listeners can picture it in their minds?
Sure. So Brand New Bros staged in NTAC HSK0. Let me pull up, because the Vale Venal tribute map that I linked is a little bit different from Dotlan if you pull it up. So if you pull up Dotlan and you look at where the stagings are, you see TVN is where Echo stages. ZA0L, that's where Forsaken Empire stages. And then you have over here, NTEC HSK, where their alliance is FAM. It was like Federated Alliance of Mafias or something like that, but it's Brand New Bros, basically. And you can see they're right outside of Ob in the Forge, or Obi, whatever. It's like they got 2 constellations over there.
So Brand New Bros are right on the entrance to Vale. What about relative to entrances and exits? How about the other 2?
So Echo is kind of in the middle of Vale, closer to Tribute. So is Forsaken Empire. They have that little middle part. You got Scumlords, which are directly to the south, and then there's 2 other groups there: Toilet Paper and Quote Alliance. Quote Alliance are Russian. Toilet Paper are French. So they're kind of outside of all of our time zone. But they got the you remember that system I was talking about, the GEC-J TAC-9 system? So Quote took that. Quote Alliance took that little constellation and they took that system. There was recently a fight because Forsaken Empire and Reverb, they wanted their renters over there in that constellation. And they put a Fortizar down there. That Fortizar died to many, many, many groups. And the funny story about that Fortizar is that everyone that shot it were previous bat phones of Forsaken Empire and Echo.
Oh.
Yeah, so the CFC took that system basically through our combined efforts. And then we put up a relationship with Trig. Actually, it's funny. There's one of our co-CEOs, Garrick Shadowbane. He was able to play online minigolf with Pittsburgh, and that kind of saved the relationship between Trigger and Rote Capel. So yeah, it's like little things like that actually had a butterfly effect. And that's why we bailed them out. Let me link a Dread fight there too. I think it was right after this. Yeah, so when they reinforced GEC-J, they got Dreads dropped on them. And let me find that one. I'll explain it a little bit better.
So if anyone is thinking of the name or hearing the name Trigger Happy and feeling like they recognize it from somewhere else, they've been discussed sort of at length on TIS. I know they were a candidate for our most influential group. I personally didn't vote for them, but they were an interesting oddball group because they were formed by, and now I've forgotten his name. He was a very popular Kendar. He was a very popular FC within the Imperium. He led a SIG that was extremely large and very popular, very successful, and when they made deployments as well. But he ended up leaving the Imperium and forming his own alliance called Trigger Happy. And at some point, Kendar left Trigger Happy, and so there were a bunch of questions. Is this the end? Is Trigger Happy just going to die? And then more recently, Snuff disbanded, and Trigger Happy was sort of the inheritant, or rather the beneficiary of a lot of snuffed out corporations and members. So that it may be where you have heard the name in the past. And I think we'll talk a little bit later on the show about some recent developments regarding a snuff reformation, maybe, possibly, perhaps, and how that is affecting Trigger Happy.
Yeah, still trying to find it. I think it's there it is. Okay, I found the kills. So let me find the battle report. All right, I linked it. So basically, yeah. So that was one of the open relationships between Trig and the relationship between Trig and Rote Capella, or the CFC, I should say, because pretty much everyone in the CFC was. You can kind of see where the oh no, that's the wrong one. Where is it? That's where we dropped on them. No, ignore that one. That's where we dropped on them, I think. But basically, what happened was there was a fight over the Fortizar in Gek. It was kind of a stalemate, but then Fico actually won that fight as they were. It got reinforced. Trigger was retreating. Fico caught them on a gate and just started killing their Macarials, right? So they dropped dreads. They being Trig dropped some dreads, and then they got counter dropped by Reverb, by Fico, basically. And then that's where Pitts kind of contacted Garrick, and he's like, "Hey, man, there's some dreads on field. You want to kill them?" And we're like, "Hell yeah, we want to kill some dreads." So we burned over there, lit the Sino, and just mopped the floor with their dreads. It was a lot, like, for the time and the response. I think we got like 30 dreads in there. It was not fair. We blobbed the crap out of them.
That's okay. I like this battle report.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just a complete zonk, basically.
Fair enough. So now let's dig a little bit into the story regarding Trig. We gave a little bit of the history. I've been informed that some of the timeline is a bit off in my recollection, but otherwise the events are accurate. Let's talk about what they are or how they're doing now, because there has been some news going around that stuff is coming back, and therefore Trig is losing members.
How do they know? Because I think Elitist Ops is still in there.
Yeah, I have no idea what that. I know that Aggressively Average just kind of collapsed maybe a half hour ago, but that's about.
Yeah, but I don't think that had anything to do with Snuff.
All right, yeah. Fair enough.
There, I linked the second battle report that I linked. That's a more accurate, like, it has everything pruned out that wasn't related. So as you can see, like, we dropped a lot of dreads on them, and it was a really good counter drop and everything. But that's like probably the most you'll see, like the most dreadnoughts that you'll see over in Vale or any.
So let's turn our focus towards the future here and look at what do we think is going to happen with this war going forward. There's been a lot happening in the neighboring regions with GOTG getting kicked out of their space, fraternities now moving in, possibly some renters or some other alliances moving in further up north, and the Imperium appears to be extending their influence further up north as well through the addition of Ranger Regiment. Do you feel like any of that is going to be impacting you guys in Tribute and Vale?
Like I put out in the TIS channel, Norris is on notice. The CFC does not take kindly to renters up north. We want PvP, and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right, fair enough. Looking more specifically at the fights you guys have over in Vale of the Silent, do you feel like those are going to continue, at least at their current pace? Anything look like it's going to change?
It's hard to predict the future in EVE, but I will say this. It's a good thing that all groups have going on. It's good content. It's a reason to log in and play this game. We got new groups coming in. I have heard that a corp in Goonswarm is going to actually leave and come up to Vale as their own little independent alliance. Could be true, could be not. Like I said, just rumor mill right now. But the more corps that are coming out there, the more small entities, there's more fights over moons, more fights over iHubs. And these are upgraded iHubs, by the way. That's why we toast them. And basically just having more of, fuck this guy in particular, or we're going to fight them because we're going to fight them. So.
I want to latch on to like everything you just said and use it to transition into a bit of news story. So the couple of things I want to latch on to are, one is screw this guy in particular, and two, which is corpse scuttlebutt, because both of those things are absolutely fantastic. Sometimes corpse scuttlebutt is wrong, and sometimes it's right. And we saw an example of this recently with the eviction of TD Sin, where there were reports like 2 weeks in advance that HK was going to be evicting them while Izuki was gone at the summit. Of course, it did end up happening. If you'd like more details on that particular event, you can go watch this most recent episode of Talking in Stations on Sunday. We had some FCs from Hard Knocks, from the Initiative, as well as Izuki himself on to talk about it. But then more recently, since that, the Initiative has invaded Rage, which is the home system of Hard Knocks, who were previously the attackers in the home system of TD Sin. And they went through, burned a bunch of structures. I was watching Panda's stream last night, and they were killing faction forts. I think they killed faction forts, one regular fort, whatever like subcapitals or caps dropped from there as well, and then looted the field. Anybody else have any other updates, or is it just Rage burned again?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much it. The big story there was that frig holes, right? The frig hole mechanics have changed, so you can no longer roll them. That being the case, one opened straight into Delve, or a few jumps from Delve, which is how the Initiative got into Rage to begin with.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When the frig holes were introduced, the mantra was evictions can never happen again because frig holes. And since frig holes, we've seen one eviction where the defenders utilize, I don't know if they utilized a frig, no, they didn't utilize a frig hole, they utilized winning the fight for whole control in order to bring in allies. But then, of course, the attackers just utilized their regained whole control to bring in even more. And then we had another eviction that was successful explicitly because the attackers could use a frigate hole to bring all their forces in. Maybe you can call that an exception to the rule because it was nullseckers killing wormholers, but I feel like the line is getting somewhat blurred in this particular case. We've got, on this particular show, wormholers who are actively fighting in nullsec, and twice now we've had nullseckers who are actively evicting wormholers. So times are weird in Eve, man, I tell you what.
Yeah, the frig holes are a good thing because, I don't have a lot of experience with wormholes, but that whole, grind of hole control can really be a drag, I think, on content sometimes. Having a way to get pilots in, I think freshens it up a little bit. And I know a lot of wormholes are probably screaming, Silver, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, this is garbage. But I think, having a way to get fresh pilots back into the fight or to get reinforcements, as you can't control everything, is good for wormholes.
I don't really have an opinion on it, honestly. The last eviction that we did was taking our C2 hole from these Russian groups, and we did have a frig hole spawn, but it was an old one. They did get a couple pilots in, and in the end, they did fight over the final time with Pete's. But really, honestly, it didn't bother us, but it wasn't a very large eviction like this. So my personal opinion is it's not that big of a deal, and we tend to cry about everything and overhype everything. But probably dudes that do evictions better and more frequent can attest to it more than I can.
Well, I think in the case of Rage, you just got. What about in the unfortunate case? I think what happened in Rage was pretty rare, right? That you got a frigate hole that opened directly to a huge block, right there.
Oh yeah, that was.
That's just very unlucky.
That was a 1 in a million shot. That's I don't know, making a 3-point shot from half court with your eyes closed type of odds.
Right. So I think the complaint is where wormholes used to be able to stave off a 400-man, goon fleet or Imperium fleet coming in by hole control. Now they can't stop that should they get so unlucky as to get what happened to Rage. But I think the chances of it happening are so low that maybe they just got unlucky. I don't know.
So while we're on the subject of wormholes, Prom, I have a question to you about the life of nullsec C2 wormhole livers who have a nullsec C5 statics. Because previously that was the preferred home of nullsec hunters. That's where you would go because you could roll your static and get somewhere new in nullsec to go and roam.
Yeah.
However, now we have the new needlejack filaments, which allow you to do the same thing, but you don't have to live in a wormhole. You don't have to roll. All you have to do is pop a new filament. Does that mean that we should be seeing a significant decline in the number of groups who are living in these C2 null C5s?
Honestly, we've been doing both kind of fleets. Yeah, there's a convenience of needlejack, but once you pop the filament, like they're good to escape, I guess. For us, at the very least, we'll sometimes go out, just go straight from Jita, get a new ship, straight from Jita, go out and pew pew. But the good advantage of actually having a home hole is that you can roll it at your own pace. You have a home for like quick reshipping and stuff like that. So if if one or two dudes wipe and you're only 2 jumps out from your home hole, you can just reship and come back into the fight. So it's really there's positives and negatives to it.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's going to cut down on the number of C2 null corps because we want to live there and we chose to live there and we knew these filaments were coming back anyway. So. And it didn't change life before, and it probably won't change life very much after.
Yeah, there's the also problem with needlejacks is that they're kind of one-way trips.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Right? That's what I'm saying.
You can't, and you like get launched like 60 jumps away. That's a one-way ticket. So that's not the same as rolling your C2 null static, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you die, like let's say you go out roaming, right? And there's 5 of you, right? One dude dies, you can just go back and reship if you're close to your home hole, right? If you're in a needlejack thing, it's like, well, okay, guys, I'm gonna get potted back to Jita. So
a person in chat actually made the comment that you can't get your loot back if you do needlejack filaments, whereas with a home hole you can. So
yeah, it's difficult.
Whose name I'm not gonna pronounce, but you know who you are.
Yeah. So it's a different, fresher way of playing the game. I'm definitely for them. I love them, but I don't always use them, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. So we mentioned an alliance called Aggressively Average earlier on in the show when we were discussing Trigger Happy. We mentioned that they collapsed. I think they were also briefly discussed in our previous episodes on the state of LowSec in 2020 because they had some appearances in that action as well. What's the story here with Aggressively Action? They sort of went from a couple of hundred down to 0, like literally from 300 down to 3. 3 corporations, that is, and 40 members. So this is quite the fail cascade, if it is indeed a fail cascade.
Yeah, honestly, it's Blinky Jimmy's fault. He's the terror of Black Rise, and he decided to stop logging in, so AA just died.
So is that, if I were to interpret that for the layman, a power player, FC content creator burned out and the leadership collapsed? Okay.
Yeah. Blinky Jimmy is the terror. He's been given the name the Terror of Black Rise because he's really, really well known in Black Rise. He was my corp mate way back when, so yeah, he was.
I'm curious where all these guys are going because like it's not on Dotland yet, but like where Cruiser Screw is going to wind up and some of these other groups.
Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe some of them will end up flying again with you, Promi.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. It's really only just Blinky Jimmy that I flew with. That's when we were in Waffles, like 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
All right. The final little bit of news we're going to cover today is some ongoing, or rather, it's an ongoing war between Wrecking Crew, otherwise known as RC, and the residents of Providence, Provi Block. They have been fighting for like a year now, 6 months to a year, just on and off. Actually, more than a year. They've been fighting ever since the station flip, when nullsec stations were turned into faction outposts. And during that whole shenanigans, Providence effectively lost control of all of Providence. And the Sov was taken up mostly by PL and then retaken by Legacy Coalition. And in the scuffle, Wrecking Crew took some Sov in the northwestern corner, or pardon me, the northeastern corner of Provi, and held on to it. They've held on to it ever since. And sort of as Pravi has regrown and grown their control over the Providence region, they started pushing back at the Sov, be it for fights or because they just don't want a hostile entity living right next to them. So these fights have been going on, they've been mulling in the background, we've covered it on the show before, and we're talking about it again because we have a couple of instances now where Wrecking Crew has decided to drop their super capital fleet on top of some Providence capitals. I know we have one battle report that happened last night at around 0100, and Silver, you were actually there, so what was going on there? Or at least you have the story.
Yeah, so Wrecking Crew acquired a test FC, Citadel, right? He was sort of the main FC in the Fraternity War for Test and Legacy, and has since moved over to Wrecking Crew. And really, since he's moved over there, their aggression has picked up, not just towards Pravibok, but to Legacy space and sort of Northern Catch. And that tension has been growing over the past couple of weeks. And last night was the first time I've seen them like commit super hard to a Legacy force, right? So they went down into Legacy space, started RFing some structures, and Legacy responded with a subcap fleet. And the subcap fight went pretty well for Legacy, but we did not expect or were we ready for the escalation that happened from Wrecking Crew. I'll show you the battle report.
Wow, so poking the Legacy bear, so to speak, that's pretty incredible. I know there's been talk in the past about, particularly when Pandemic Legion and Northern Coalition had taken on the Sov and the stations in Providence, they noted that the reason Legacy sort of got involved, or part of it, was because they put a Fortizar too close to Legacy space, basically putting them within super range. And Legacy were like, nope, that's not cool with us, and ended up taking the whole region. So it'll be interesting to see if these aggressions continue or if Legacy starts striking back.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is now the second like large fight we've had with Legacy versus Wrecking Crew, but minus Test. So Test is sort of not involved at the moment with this conflict. So you can see, Legacy space is quite wide, and our alliances have their capitals and super capital forces spread apart from each other. So when we get like an escalation like you see here, where things were going good, we dropped a couple of dreads to kill their facts, and then they dropped 6 supers. We just didn't have an answer because we just don't have anything consolidated. But this was a lesson for us to fix it. But it's interesting that we can have this kind of fight without sort of the Test hammer. You know what I mean?
So the question was asked in chat, who is Wrecking Crew nowadays? You can see a good number of them up in this battle report here. I'm going to be honest, though, as a member of Noir, we are members of Wrecking Crew, and I still lose track of who is members of Wrecking Crew at any point in time, so don't feel bad if you don't know, because even members like me don't really know.
Yeah, they shift around a lot, but the main components of Wrecking Crew are your purple-headed helmet warriors, Templates, Rogue Consortium. Those are sort of the big 3, and then you pepper in some other groups now and then. And dock workers, traditionally friendly with Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, and like HTP, they're a solid active member of Wrecking Crew as well, but I feel like they're more tied to Pravi. I feel like if Wrecking Crew ever went somewhere other than Pravi, HTP would probably stay in Pravi because they just love that sort of blopsing, fighting behind enemy lines, doing a bunch of cloaky bastardry, if you will.
Yeah, I agree there. But this was a good fight, and I expect that this will continue to simmer along the catch northern border of Legacy space.
Indeed. So we also had another interesting fight where Wrecking Crew had their supers dropped on someone else. I think it was Pravi. It was a bit of an interesting situation where I was out with Noir flying another op. We had a separate op not related to Wrecking Crew. And we just started seeing pings saying, all supers log in, everybody get your supers, all caps right now in fleet, etc., which are the best pings to see. But it turns out that there was another op going on, and Wrecking Crew and Pravi had sort of been dropping subcaps. I think caps were on the field as well. And a dude just sort of accidentally jumped a super in. And so Wrecking Crew had to drop the hammer to save it. Fortunately, they did, and that was cool. Looks like we have Seto in chat talking about all the fun fights that are being had.
I was saying,
so
like, Seto, you need to come on the show, buddy. We need to talk.
Maybe we'll get you guys on later for another follow-up show on how the Pravi RC war is going on. That'd be pretty cool. So that's the news from that side of the nullsec spectrum. It seems like a big war has ended, but there are still lots of smaller wars going on that are interesting to keep an eye on. One smaller war that we don't have any news from, but just to keep an eye out for if you're browsing through Zkill, is the ongoing conflict between Legacy and groups friendly to Legacy and the inhabitants of Ethereum Reach, most specifically like Triumvirate and Slice, because they have been sort of fighting over that newly vacated territory from when Fraternity and the rest of Winter Coalition moved out. And there have been some skirmishes, a couple of cat brawls, if memory serves, happening over there, so it'll be interesting to see if fights escalate. Triumvirate and Slice are members of PandaFam, so now that PandaFam is not otherwise occupied up in the north, we'll see if they decide to lend their aid and start stirring up conflict down in the south with Legacy. Who knows? But we'll keep you updated if anything changes.
So I was saying in chat he didn't want to fight Legacy. They came to him. That's why you're RFing Legacy structures. Come on, man. Come on.
Hey, it's good. Fight. It's content, man.
Oh,
always
no, we're
fight.
Loving it. We're
always,
loving it.
Always take the fight. Always, no matter what. Even if the numbers aren't on your side. Who knows? You might win.
Some interesting advice. I'm not sure if I would take it, but whatever floats your boat.
Just undock, man.
I mean, can +1 to undocking. Undocking is a good idea. Not necessarily taking a heavily outnumbered fight just because.
I don't know, man. Lord Servant does it all the time. Noted by these battle reports.
Who deployed the Pravi? No one deployed the Pravi. Seto, we need you on the show so we can hash these things out, brother.
All right. Well, we'll take that discussion to a Discord DM somewhere, and in the meantime, or you know what? Maybe instead of taking it to a DM, you guys can hash it out at an Eve meet. I have some recommendations for you. There's one coming up on May 22nd. It's happening in New Orleans. I know you're relatively close, Silver. I don't know where Seto is though. It's happening on May 22nd. As I mentioned, it's in New Orleans. Tickets are on sale now. We also have a little bit later, if New Orleans isn't your thing, Eve North occurring in June, on June 26th. Where is Eve North happening, actually? Let me go to the Eventbrite site.
I think it's like in New York somewhere.
It's Niagara, and on the Canada side of Niagara.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. So if you guys wanted to take a trip up to Canada, that'd be an awesome option for you.
And this year is in Niagara, and I think that's a good choice because it's pretty family friendly. If you wanted to bring the kids and stuff, there's plenty of things to do. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah,
it's, but, you know,
I was gonna say Eve meets are definitely fun. They're really good stuff.
Seto, if you're less of a family friendly kind of guy and more of a go out in the woods and get drunk and do that sort of camping thing, there's also Eve Northeast happening on August 7th. This particular one, it is in the northeast of the US. In particular, it's supposed to be a barbecue, which is pretty cool. This has been happening yearly. It's actually run by Exuki Z, so if you have some burning questions about the eviction or the CSM, he'll be there. He might answer them, he might not, no guarantees. But this one is happening up in New York State. There's an address on their website if you want to go check it out. Tickets are also on sale for that. And rounding out the list, if you aren't going to go anywhere else, you can always go to Eve Vegas. It's no longer the big CCP-sponsored thing. It's going back to its roots in a way. It's not a strictly Imperium or Goonswarm-centered event anymore. It's more of just a general EVE event that isn't CCP-sponsored like it was last year or the year before or anything like that. That is, of course, happening in Vegas on October 23rd. Should be a cool thing. All the details are, of course, on their website, and tickets are on sale. Let's go ahead and hop into our segment we like to call Something You Might Not Know. And I have something. I'm not sure about my guest and my co-host, although they were warned, so feel free to shame them if they don't have anything brought up yet.
I'm ready.
Okay, we're ready to go. So I'm going to kick things off with talking about flex structures, which after I say this, I want to ask Kwame some more questions about the war they're fighting, because I just remembered them. So the way flex structures work is they are, in particular, right now at least, jump bridges and Cynos jammers. So jump bridges are the things that let you jump without fatigue for capitals and below from one system to another within 5 light years if memory serves. You have to have solve upgrades for them. They're really cool. Some people say they're overpowered. Some people say they're essential for hoarding large swaths of space. Details. Cyno jammers played a major role in the war that happened in the South, the Southern War between Winter Coalition and Legacy Coalition. And the interesting wrinkle with Cyno jammers is that you can have 3 of the structures anchored in the system, but you can only have 1 online at a time. Whereas jump bridges, you can only have 1 anchored and 1 online at a time. And the cool thing about the flex structures is they don't work like other upwell structures when you reinforce them. Or rather they do, they just work like low-powered ones. So if you reinforce a flex structure, you shoot both its shield and its armor at the same time. And what this means is that after you reinforce its armor, the service is shut off. So the Cyno jammer goes down and the jump bridge is no longer functional, which are really key things. This is the reason, in fact, you can anchor 3 Cyno jammers in a system at a time, is because otherwise people would just be reviewing Cyno jammers like nuts, or at least so goes the theory. But with the jump bridges, for example, the reinforcement timers on all of these things are as little as 30 minutes and as long as 23 hours, or 25, depending on how the plus or minus 3 hours goes. So if you reinforce a flex structure just after the end of when it's supposed to come out of reinforcement, you can have the thing shut off for an entire day, and you only had to shoot at it for 20 minutes. It's pretty cool. My corporation, Noir, abused this quite heavily in our recent deployment out into Fade. If you want to hear more about that, you can check out the Declarations of War podcast where we talked about it. But enough shilling. Let's get to Promi, and I want to ask you, do you guys fight over these things? Like, you mentioned you use your jump bridge network to get over to Vale to the fights. Has Pico tried to destroy that network?
Yeah, actually, they did. I want to say, I don't remember which one it was. I think it was the 900 one. They reinforced it and then they eventually killed it, and we just replaced it. Yeah, we fought over those things. They are pretty useful. They're really fun to fight over too.
Awesome. All right. Well,
yeah, I would argue it's even more fun to fight over now that they've backed off structures, right? So now you can have a fight.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you can have a fight on an
really good for.
And not have to worry about the goddamn Keepstar or Fortizar shooting you. So
yeah, we'll do that with no vacancies if we ever like roam into, I don't know, like let's say a Horde space or Brave space, right? We'll go to GE Tech and we'll shoot the Ansiblex over there, hoping for a response, and then we'll have like a drag bubble, so people as they stream and they get caught in the drag bubble.
Mm-hmm. So previously it's not really possible fun when you could anchor them in range of a Keepstar gun. Right. So
yeah, it's definitely a +1 to CCP. Like, very, very good change.
All right, Silver, you're up. What might our audience not know?
Sort of a technical / mechanical thing that I came across the other night when I was in Fleet and my members didn't know. Sometimes if your overview gets screwed up, you're missing a window, say like your selected items bar disappears, or maybe your Fleet window disappeared, and you want a quick way to get it back. In your game client, if you hit Control-Tab, just like Alt-Tab in Windows, you can Control-Tab through Windows. And you can see Control-Tab, you'll see all the windows like up, and you can tab through and bring them all up one at a time to find the window that you're missing. It's a neat trick.
That's really cool. All right, Promi, your turn. What might our audience not know?
So if you guys remember when the Svipple got nerfed pretty hard, like a couple of years back, a lot of people just dismissed it. Something you might know, Svipples are very good small solo roaming ships, especially for catching crabbing ships out in Sancha space or Blood Raider space. And I do that almost exclusively whenever I get a connection out there, or a good Thera connection, or a Yeet filament out there. They have a very high EM resist. They're capless guns. And basically, they're really fast too. They have almost a 2-second warp speed, like a line and warp speed. They're really good at catching crabs, and they have a really good sig radius, even in sharpshooter mode, to the point of where I caught a Nightmare that was running some, I want to say it was like a rally point or something, and he couldn't track me. I ended up killing the Nightmare and getting about 1 billion in loot. So,
oh wow!
So you want that ship to catch the really high APM ratters.
I use that almost exclusively down south. It's a very, very, very good crab catching ship.
Agreed. I like it.
Ezekiel's not working with me for right now, but I want to link that nightmare fit because you can't be like, oh, I'm not going to kill it. It's a nightmare or it's a Dominix or something like that. They shoot explosive, and most people don't plug the explosive hole down south, and they go down like butter. Like it's like a hot knife cutting through butter. It's amazing.
Right on. So while they try and pull up that kill mail, we're going to go ahead and plug our next week's show. Next week on Talking in Stations, the midweek report, that is, we're going to have Vale of the Violent Part 2. I was confirming as we were recording this show that we're going to have representatives from FICO Coalition on to tell their side of the story. In particular, you may have heard the name Lord Servant come up a couple of times in this show. Well, he's going to be on. And he's going to describe what things look like from their side of the table. In particular, it looks like maybe, possibly, perhaps Hard Knocks is coming back to Vale, if I'm interpreting smoke signals correctly. Rami, have you heard about this?
No, literally no.
Okay, well, we'll find out. I might be reading my smoke signals wrong. But there's some interesting things to happen, interesting developments, and definitely it'll be nice to get a second point of view on this fight, specifically from a character as... well, he's just a character, Lord Servant. You may know him from his old videos. They're one of my favorites, the Dunk Phoenixes. So back before Capitals had the change to the weapon systems and Haas were introduced, you could do funky things with Phoenixes fit with cruise missiles and just volley sub-capitals on the undock of low-sec stations. And Lord Servant made a number of amazing videos about these, which you should totally check out. So that's a thing. Tune in next week, 23:59 Eve time. It's going to be March 18th, and we'll take a look at that. Did we find our kill board?
I linked the one over there. It's literally just all the kills I've had with the Svipple, and you can see like it's all Ishtars and Myrmidons. I'm trying to find that nightmare.
And these are all
happened
solo
right
kills
around
too.
Mm-hmm.
And you're killing Dommies, you're killing Myrmidons. Wow.
Yeah, like it's an incredibly good ship.
Did you use it before the Sino changes took effect, or only afterwards? Could you describe how those changes affected your gameplay?
I actually started it before Blackout, so it was before the... Yeah, there you go. Artemis found the nightmare. So I went there before... I went to Delve before Blackout, and I used it almost exclusively. Then during Blackout, honestly, I had a lot of fun because the dudes over there, like, they adapted to it, and they started, like, nuding me out and everything. That's why it looks kind of wonky if you look at the fit itself. Like, why does he have a cap booster and NOSes on it? It's literally to run my reps, basically, because, yeah, newts hurt. But yeah, I've had ships, I've had supers dropped on me. It'll tank EM fighters, no problem. It won't take any other kind of fighters, though. You kind of pop really fast with explosive fighters.
I'm surprised you're not using a combat prober. I know a lot of people enjoy flying the Hecate with a combat prober because they can just roam around, combat scan sight runners. If you're entering a system, sometimes it's quicker to combat scan rather than to descan someone down.
I need the 2 NOSes, though. Like, those are non-negotiable. I need those. Yeah, but that nightmare, if you saw all that loot dropped and I was able to get it, it was amazing. And due to asset safety, I got it all out safe.
All right, cool beans. That'll do it for this week's episode of Talking in Stations. Hopefully you learned something. I certainly did. You can tune in this coming Sunday at 1600 Eve time for the Sunday show. The time hasn't changed in terms of Eve time, but it has changed in terms of if you live in the US and daylight savings time took effect. So if you want to tune into the Sunday show and you haven't yet in a week or so, just type into Google 1600 UTC to whatever your local time zone is, and that'll let you know when to be turning on twitch.tv/Talking in Stations. Similar thing has happened here on the midweek show. We'll be back again next week with the Vale of the Violent Part 2 at 23:59 Eve time. Thanks again to Silver for co-hosting with me and our special guest Prometheus for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that'll do it.
Thank you.
Nah, do your thing. Do your outro.
I was going to say, I look forward to hearing Lord's side. He is the self-appointed Gig X of the North, so I want to hear his side.
Oh man, great character. All right, That'll do it for this week's episode. See you next time.